Thanks again for the time, everybody, for joining. Few session kind of housekeeping things just to get things started on this side. We are recording today's session and we'll make it available on the Product Makers community afterwards in a few days if you need it. Please look for our event recap topic. You'll find that on the event itself, but also posted on the homepage of the site afterwards if you need access to it. For today's session, we are using Q&A for questions and chat for chat. So if you want to do any banter during the session or chime in on different comments or remarks that the panel's making as we're going along, feel free to utilize the chat for that. Again, utilize the Q&A for any kind of post-session Q&A that we'll use on that side. I'm really happy to have these three, what I might call product makers in our community today, particularly because each of you are actually part of the community and have done things in our community, show up at different parts of it. And it's really great to give a profile to some of the different people that are part of this. First up is Sam Joya. Sam's the director of product at Debasso, a business management platform. Sam started on their education team, which is really cool, a really great product journey on this side, and became the first product manager, and now essentially is the director of product there, leading the team, which is great. Rachel Brown is a group product manager on the product team at Altruist, an LA-based fintech, and has built products at early and late-stage companies and global financial institutions. And Sam Kawsarani is the VP of product at Rails, a fintech building the largest financial data network, and has worked as well in a number of different prior product roles as well through his career. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So why don't we just get started, maybe to kind of warm things up a little bit. Why don't each of you just maybe tell me a little bit about yourselves? So let's start with Sam first. We'll go over to Rachel and then Sam K, maybe for a few thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I'm the director of product at Debasso. We are an entirely bootstrapped company, and we basically are a CRM for small business owners and entrepreneurs. So we create a suite of tools with contracts and invoicing, scheduling, workflows, everything that a small business owner needs to run their business. So I got started at Debasso about going on 4 years ago now. I'm coming up on my fourth year, and it's been a great journey. I started on the education team and moved over to product. So it's been a really fun company to work with.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great story.
Hey, good morning. My name is Rachel. I'm the group product manager at Altruist, which is a fintech company based in LA. We're focused on making financial advice better, accessible, and affordable. I've been here about 2 years, and prior was a mobile PM at Tala, which is also a fintech company based in LA, and started my career in management consulting. So I'm fortunate to have spent my entire career in financial services and largely within product, but really excited to be here and sharing about what that journey looks like for folks.
Cool. Sam K.
Hey everyone, Sam K, VP of Product at Rails. Rails is an API-first product. We focus on providing access to accounting data to fintechs, FIs that are trying to build cool products in the space. Like Rachel, my background is also a lot of finance product for the past few years. So it's been fun. I love working on SMB space products, and been at Rails from day one.
That's awesome. That's great. So like we've all got different journeys into product. I mean, I know I stumbled into this career in an interesting way. I mean, I came from a music background. I worked in the book publishing business. I found myself into tech, doing some stuff. And before you know it, I was a product manager, working as a UX designer, lots of different things. And we've got, a lot of us have really interesting journeys and really interesting backgrounds. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about just like your journey, your trip into this. Maybe what probably wasn't a direct path, I'm assuming, in a lot of cases. And so curious how you ended up in this. And maybe we can start with Rachel first on this side, and then we'll go over to Sam and then Sam K to wrap this one up.
Great. Yes, I started my career in management consulting and was fortunate to have an opportunity to work in our digital strategy and innovation group, which is where I first got a taste of product management and had a great mentor and friend who helped give me opportunities to get product experience, which helped me land my first role at a startup. I was actually a program manager within the product team and was able to make my way into the product role formally about 6 months in, which really gave me kind of my break, if you will, and chance to get some product experience under my belt there. So that's kind of how I broke into product. And then since joining Altrist, have been able to grow my career really quickly from senior PM to a group product manager, just with, as I'm sure both Sams will share, earlier stage companies, there's a lot of opportunity to grow as the company grows as well.
Did you have like somebody around you, Rachel, that kind of like gave you the nudge, someone that gave you the kind of support or the push to make that transition from maybe management consulting, digital strategy, kind of innovation group into this kind of product role?
Absolutely, yeah. One of my friends and mentors at Ernst & Young, where I worked and started my career, was one of the pioneers of that digital strategy group. And they actually had a fantastic product management boot camp that I participated in just internally. So if you do have resources at your companies to take advantage of, some type of rotational APM program or boot camp is a really great way to get a taste of the role and kind of vet whether that's something you want to pursue full time.
That's awesome. Thank you. Sam, your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I actually came out to LA to work in the film industry, as many people do. And after finding that that is more a lifestyle than a career, I started doing some freelance web design and some different things there. And I was using this platform called Dubsado to do my contracts and invoicing. Found out they were located where I was in Burbank, California, and met up with them at a networking event. And, over, a couple months, suddenly I was working here on their education team, taking customer calls and, just helping evangelize and educate about the product. And then, Dubsado at the time was only about 3 years old as a company. We just celebrated our 6th birthday this February. And at the time, there was no product team. So when our CEO, Becca, started to pull that together, she was pulling, folks from different teams on the company. And I had expressed a lot of interest in just improving the product and had a lot of ideas. So she pulled me in. And then that just kind of snowballed into being a product manager. Then suddenly we had 4 development teams that I was a PM for across the entire, I was just the one PM across the entire product. So then we grew that, and I'm now managing 2 PMs and a design team.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's really cool. I love that story because I always find some of the best product people are the people that are passionate about the product and get to know it, support people and success people, particularly roll into those roles really well on that side. How about you, Sam? Sam K, what are your thoughts here?
I got into product by mistake in 2007, I believe. So I'm originally a comp sci graduate. So I thought I'm going to go the software engineer route. But after a few consultancy gigs in software engineering, I discovered that it's probably not my strongest asset. And then I should probably focus on the project management side. So I got into a UK-based startup, and I was mostly like a deployment and project management on site. But part of it was land and expand kind of mentality with the client, see how can you improve the product offering. So I remember I prepared my first PRD or product requirements document as part of trying to expand something with a client. And that's when the CTO was like, Sam, you should probably consider being the product manager for this feature or for this solution. It's like, I have no idea what you just said. Let me look it up. I'll get back to you. Fast forward, I've been in product since then. Originally, my passion was mostly let's get the product to market, figure out the problems, figure out the solution. And then now my passion is kind of still product launches, but it's more focused on growing the next generation of product leaders. So I'm always excited for what my product managers are launching next. As much as I'm excited about the release, I'm excited for their first launch. But it's been definitely an up and down journey between trying product in startups or trying it at scale with an enterprise or consulting hat. But kind of find my niche more in startup Series A kind of space. So that's where I'm at Rails now. Kind of the cool always to get the product in the early stage and see it grow.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's really good to see. I think that obviously the pattern and the trend in this is you don't necessarily land in product. You make a journey sometimes too. You don't study it. Yeah, that's super exciting to see that we've all had various journeys into that, and often from very different career backgrounds and very different educational backgrounds, which is fascinating. Each of you have like very different roles, and obviously in very different organizations at various stages of growth as well on that side. In your experience, how has the role changed or evolved depending on the stage of growth, size of company, type of product, industry, et cetera, that maybe is part of that? And Sam, I'm going to start with you first on this one, then we'll jump over to Sam K and then to Rachel maybe at the end. But curious on your thoughts on this side.
Yeah, so the role has changed a lot. And because we're growing a product team from scratch, a lot of it has been up to me to define, which is both exciting and sometimes, frustrating or challenging. But yeah, really, when we first started out, we were kind of dipping our toes into it. I was almost more like consulting from an education, customer service perspective, just sharing what frustrations our users were having, what were they interested in, what were they asking for. And then, as that became a formal PM role, because the company is so small, I basically collaborate directly with our CEO to look at, growing, planning our roadmap and, deciding kind of, the direction that different features should take. With Dubsado, we could probably have like 7 or 8 different dedicated product teams with how diverse all of the tools are. So it's a lot of work, with the CEO, just kind of planning where do we want to focus our efforts, especially being a self-funded company. We can't do it all at once. So, there's a good deal of time spent on prioritizing and kind of planning that. And then, as we got further along and we started hiring designers, the role also expanded to include people management. So managing a team of designers, helping them both in the company and contribute to product, and now training other PMs into the role. So that is very new to me, but it's also very fun and exciting to take a little bit of a step back. I think that's been the best part about this is things, product decisions that I used to get, very bogged down in before. Just that one step of removal gives you a lot of perspective. So that's been a great thing. But yeah, it's a lot of just going where you're needed and filling the gaps.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Sam K, your thoughts here?
I'll say it's similar journey to Sam in a way. So when I started in product was like by mistake, was pretty much limited. Tell us what the client wants and engineering will figure out what to do. So we thought in 2008, pre all these kind of new agile models and product frameworks that we have right now. And then as I started kind of progressing into that role and switching between different companies and different products, the role started evolving. Okay, well, let's figure out what are the pain points. How can we get faster as a business? How can we get better market traction? All right, well, how the hell do I do that? Let me just kind of go look into the market, look at the business. And on certain occasion was also like an internal product. Sometimes like, oh, well, I have like 6 stakeholders saying completely different things for one product. How do you manage that? How do you make sure align? So there were kind of different phases from, if you look at it, but you start as pure project management requirement gathering or your BA hat, if you want to look at it. And then you start expanding into the project management, day-to-day delivery of the product. And then the last 5 years has been focused on, okay, well, now that I know how to deliver the product, how can I build strategies around it to know where we can be in 2 years? I'm going to just focus on the next one. And eventually evolve where, I'm managing people, right? I have to mentor folks on what are the best product practices or how to kind of focus on the strategic arm, what they have to kind of strength or things area to work on. I kind of find now my passion more in that area as the product leadership side on the people side. But like you have to go through those phases, I feel like, to learn a lot of those different areas and find what you want. Like I've been in roles where I was director of product, but was still an IC writing user stories and kind of coming up with my own product roadmap. So like, am I really a director? But it's like, still an IC, who am I directing? So I think like every product manager goes through that process and the imposter syndrome that goes along the way. So I think that's been my journey that led me to where I am right now.
Yeah, that's great. And Rachel, lastly, over to you on this one.
Yeah, I think as a consultant doing product work, I spent a lot of time more focused on market research, user research, prototyping, kind of playing a scrum master like role. Because at the end of the day, if you're in product agency or a consultant, it's very different than when you're at a startup and like you are the one getting called, in the middle of the night when something's broken. So a really big shift, from being a product manager, in an agency like fashion versus at a really large company versus at a startup. So as a product manager and even as a senior product manager, my focus was on shipping really great products. So like a lot of product delivery skills, writing really detailed specs, managing releases, and focused on increasing my individual scope. And what I've kind of seen is, as you start to transition, more from that senior PM to, let's say, a group PM role, it becomes a lot more about increasing scope for the company. So looking at new opportunities, putting together strategies for how to win in that space, different types of hypotheses around, what some of those maybe more strategic product bets are, like that messy middle of product strategy. And then as I'm kind of continuing my career growth and shifting a bit more into that product leadership mentality, a lot of my time is actually focused on scaling the product org and scaling the company. So building relationships with, each department, focusing a lot right now on recruiting and developing people and really setting the frameworks for product managers to do the best work of their lives is kind of my new mission in this role.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's really exciting. Yeah, it sounds like you've all had, I guess, similar paths of growth through this, which is interesting to watch. At the same time, maybe different nudges along the way that have put you in different buckets. Sometimes just the need of, I got to write requirements, even though I'm a director of product at this point, I got to get that done, but also at the stages of certain growth that you get pulled into doing more things and different jobs and different things along the way. As each of you kind of have grown in your career, how did you advance? And in particular, maybe as part of this too, to think a little bit about is like, how did you get over that imposter syndrome to take that advance kind of step? I'm kind of curious on that side. Maybe why don't we start here with Rachel first? We'll go over to Sam K and then Sam last on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably never get over imposter syndrome. There's always something more that you could know a little bit more about. So I'm kind of the view that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It kind of helps check you on, hey, where do I really need to level up in or like have a higher degree of confidence? And if I'm feeling this way about, something I'm putting forth. So as I've grown, a lot of my opportunity to increase my personal scope just came from consistency, building predictability around, if you give me a problem, like there will be a solution and it will be on time, and just really building that trust, especially as an early PM, is really important. And then you get bigger and bigger problems to solve and more opportunities to kind of raise your hand if there's something you want to work on and maybe it's a bit outside of your day-to-day scope. And then I would say kind of phase 2 of my career, it's been a lot more focused on building relationships and communication, and being a really trusted product partner to other functions in the org has helped me advance. Whereas, I also have lessons learned from, previous roles where that's held me back. So I think that is a really important aspect of the product role that can get a bit overlooked when you're so focused on the craft and forget a little bit about, how you're being perceived in the organization or how you really help build those relationships. So I'd say that piece. And then the second is, being in the right environment at the right time, having a manager that's going to support you and coach you, being in a company where, there are opportunities for that vertical growth is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And a factor of luck maybe in some of this too, obviously, like being at the right place at the right time. Like thinking about Sam's journey as an example of, inserting yourself here in the film industry, but all of a sudden finding yourself working for the company that is the software you're using. That's a fortunate bit of luck, but also a great circumstance to be in. Sam K, on your side, I'll hear Kirsten's thoughts here.
Yeah, spot on, Rachel. I think the imposter syndrome never leaves you, right? So like as you transition and kind of grow into your product role, there's always going to be something new, and there's always going to be like that WTF moment, like I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. It's like, what do I do next? So I feel like in a way, when your imposter syndrome starts kind of simmering down a bit, that's when you know that, okay, I'm ready for the next challenge in my product kind of career. If you're like, you're not like, I got this, I got releases every day, I know what to build next, or maybe you're ready to start teaching it to someone else, and then it's like, oh, how do I manage people? How do I grow someone? So the imposter syndrome stays with you, and I think it's probably gonna part of the job description, I would say, as a product, wherever you are in your career. The second part is really failure, right? Like failing and having those kind of mistakes is a big, like it's a big lesson that it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm definitely not doing that again. Whether it's like you've interpreted the market wrong, or you probably overcommitted as a product, and who hasn't overcommitted as a product manager here. It's like these are all good lessons. I think it's just knowing where you are in your career and what to focus on, right? So the more junior you are, you probably want to strengthen your product ownership. You want to strengthen your delivery side, right? So you should be more focused on strengthening that, and then adding the strategy to it. And then okay, now it's like you have a bigger sight of the product, and you want to know what to build next, whether this quarter or next year. So that can, your tunnel vision starts growing over time, and that's going to only come with practice, by talking to other product managers, talking with people in the community, seeing how people are doing it in their organizations. And there's sometimes where you're really just the only product manager in the company, and sometimes there's no one to coach you. I've been in those organizations where the CEO launched a startup. He was told by the board that he needs someone on product. Like, and you join in, it's like design this kind of someone in mid-career, like, to figure it out. It's like, well, this is going to be fun, right? So, but you have to learn to, like, researching, talking to people. I think talking to people helps a lot. Being active, if there's a product kind of chapter or product community in your city, I definitely kind of recommend you be part of that, because you never know what you learn from someone, or the mistakes they've had they could avoid, or just learning about some new framework. Or so I definitely kind of use that and just stay up to date on the market. So I think these kind of the factors you consider to grow your career. When it comes to growing people in product, I think at that point, it's beyond just the product side. I would say talk to other leaders in other departments. It doesn't have to be just in product, because it's good to know how other leader works with their teams and what works for them beyond what is the product side of leadership.
Yeah. Sam, over to you for last comments on this one.
Yeah, mine would, my experience is very similar to Rachel's in terms of just like building trust and showing interest, and, showing that you are, like kind of baseline is like, you just have to be very dependable, very, on top of, any challenges that come your way. That's just kind of a given. For me, it's really been the relationship building, though, especially in a smaller organization. I mean, obviously you have to have the interest and the work ethic to back it up. But I credit some of this to just honestly going to fitness classes with our CEO and a couple other people at the company. Like, that really goes a long way, just building a relationship, getting to know them, especially in a company where it was like the CEO kind of handing over the product management. That gave us, an ability to get to know each other, so that she's feeling, that trust to bring me into that world. But I also, it's also through demonstrating that you really know the users and you really, want to put them first. I think that's also something that helped me grow here, is that I've always put the customer first, and I've, kind of been a leader in that, even when it's been, difficult or frustrating. But I'm really glad to hear from the others that imposter syndrome is definitely still alive and well, because especially as someone, who is still pretty new to product, to suddenly be in a director of product role. I mean, we can call that title inflation at a startup, but at the end of the day, you are fulfilling the need and you are going to figure it out. That's what you do. You solve problems and you just figure it out as you go.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and just so you know, the imposter syndrome never leaves, even if you move like I did into community and product, and now it's like, just a different level of imposter syndrome. So yeah, it never disappears. I'm going to jump through another question here quickly of like just really understanding like what does the kind of like day-to-day look like for each of you, and in particular maybe what you thought it was going to be like when you got into your current role versus really what it's actually like. And Sam, I'm going to start with you first on this one. We'll jump over to Rachel and then Sam K. But curious on your thoughts on this side.
Yeah, so I mean, my day-to-day now still involves a lot of, kind of looking into kind of a lot of the decisions being made. I'm really there to help guide and make sure that all the different projects that we're working on with so many different parts of the platform are, aligned and are going in the same direction. So it's very lucky in that respect that even though I'm not, writing, basically what we call our vision documents, our requirements for features, I'm not writing those anymore. I get to review them and help our PMs shape those. But I, am still kind of in the product, and I don't feel like I've had to be so far removed that I'm no longer doing what I enjoy, which is, delivering and developing, great features for our users. But yeah, I think the toughest part is, helping to mentor those new PMs and get them up and running. They just came on in January, so things are still very fresh. We're, coming into their second quarter. And yeah, it's very tough, but rewarding to help them, kind of take those next steps and see them take it in their own direction. So it's tough to let go of that control, but it's also very cool to see what new perspectives bring to the product.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I'm a group product manager for our consumer-facing products. So I've got 2 PMs that I've hired who each run their own product areas. And then I'm currently hiring for 2 more folks to join on my team, one to lead our mobile app, and then another to join me in launching a new product. So in the meantime, while I'm hiring, I'm actually serving as the day-to-day PM still on those teams. And I see a couple of my team members on this chat, and I'm sure they will +1. The most challenging part for me as well, Sam, is letting go of control, especially as somebody who really incubated these teams. And I really love being like in the details. I mean, I'm still right now as a group PM writing AC, like testing in Postman, like I'm probably a bit too much involved in like the day-to-day product development because I really love it. But now I'm kind of still finding my voice of knowing, okay, where to kind of push back and where to pull back when it comes to giving guidance, giving folks on my team, the space and the creativity and the freedom to run with things, while at the end of the day, still being the one who's accountable for the outcomes of it. So I would say it's kind of this delicate dance, if you will, as a group PM, where you're still responsible, you're still close enough to the product to kind of have a strong opinion about maybe how things could be built, but you're also trying to empower those on your team to, be able to really own that.
Yeah, that's good. Sam.
Yeah, Rachel will be surprised. Even if you go into VP product at a startup space, you probably have the same thing, right? Like you're still involved in some delivery items. And I think something to do with product management, our personalities, like it's very hard for us to let go the product, especially if we're there from the early days. Like if you helped shape the product, it's hard to let go. But my day-to-day is maybe in the early days, I was pretty much IC before I started hiring my team. So I was pretty much doing it all, including support sometimes. But right now, Rails adopt a squad model. So we have a squad focus on all our web products. So like our dashboards, our kind of widgets that our customers can embed. And then we have a team for our APIs and kind of our integration. And then there's another squad for our analytics and systems engineering. So we have a PM plugged into each one of those squads, and we continue to grow those and then flush it out as the teams grow. So my data is like really check-ins with each one of those to see how we're doing in that area, what we're doing next. I'm still heavily involved on what we're building next quarter and kind of working a lot with our sales team, joining on calls, sometimes the strategic calls or strategic initiatives. I'm jumping on that. And I still find myself in some of the weeds where, I'm calling Postman, I'm playing the UAT, I'm looking at database records just to see like, this does not make sense. Especially with the nature of our product, it is technical. So a lot of our product managers, product owner are technical enough to kind of lead that role, but also with an accounting and financial background, there is some kind of nuances to some industry terms and industry kind of knowledge. So you see plugging in there more as an SME or, well, this can be done this way because you have to coach the team, whether it's engineers or product, like you show some of the business rules or regulations, etc. But also evolves to the rest of the organization where they're helping with onboarding or how can we automate some of these things so that any new hire understands, kind of have a good ramp up of the product. So you'll see me plugging in on beyond that. But I don't think I'll be not involved a lot in delivery day to day, and I give the team autonomy to kind of run with it as much as I can. But there's always that part, like it's very hard to let go sometimes. But I'm sure we'll get there as the team kind of grows. But I think it's just always going to be there. Like if you're working in the startup space, whether you're a product owner, product manager, senior product manager, all the way to VP product, you can't just be like completely hands off. And I was like, I'm going to come up with a strategy. Here's what we want to build. Figure it out, team. Hopefully, at one point, I'll be at that position. But until then, like you're still, to Rachel's point, you're still liable for what you're building as the lead of that group, right? Like what you're building, are you scoping it right? Are you handing it off properly to engineering? Is your team kind of making sure they've kind of got everything right? So it's a fun exercise on a day-to-day basis, but it's definitely you learn a lot from it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm going to combine a couple other questions here that we've got coming up, just in the context of time here. But thinking back maybe through your career journey, what were some of the key factors or kind of catalysts that maybe caused you to change jobs? And for that matter, like when did you know it was time maybe to move to a new role, if you were the catalyst, maybe in that context, either leaving your existing company or moving into a new role in your existing company? So we'll start maybe here first with Rachel. I'm going to then bump over to Sam K and then Sam G. Let's start there and see what we can learn.
Yeah, my latest career move was moving from, at the time it was a Series D company to a Series A company where I'm at now. And, I really wanted to make that shift because at a larger startup, it's a lot of optimizing work, especially I was in a product growth role. So a lot of A/B testing, a lot of experimentation, which is great, but I really wanted to add the skill set of launching a product from 0 to 1 and, being able to make a bigger impact at a smaller company, as well as help shape the product and the company culture. When I joined Ultrist, I was just the second PM and employee 40. And so you really get a chance to set the framework and the foundations for, how we build product and, what we kind of hold true as our product principles. So that's been a really rewarding experience. And since joining Ultrist, I would say the biggest catalyst for the change in my role, and as I'm sure both Sams will attest to as well, your role kind of changes every 3 months at an early stage company, especially one that's growing really quickly. So it's you get to a point where you start to have a bit of an outsized impact for your role, and the biggest thing you can do is try and scale yourself. And so that comes with, incubating a new team, hiring somebody, okay, moving on to the next one. And so the biggest reason for my pretty quick career growth at Ultrist really is tied to the company's career growth and what's needed, and trying to scale myself through my product team.
Yeah, that's a great lens. Scale yourself. I love that. Sam K, I think you're next on this one.
Oops, sorry. For me, it's been an evolution from startup to startup, and then launching my own startup, and then kind of, I need to give the startup space a break. Let me get into consulting and kind of enterprise mode. I think most of them, what drove me to switch careers was I started getting stale in my kind of career growth. It's like, I'm not learning anything new. I'm ready for the next challenge. So that was one of the big drivers. I think the biggest aspect, or kind of the biggest career change for me, was going into, I had my own startup for a few years, and what, I'm ready for after the next step of that. I was like, what do I do? Do I keep trying to be an entrepreneur and launch something new, or do I go back to my roots of just product? And that's when I was like, I have some gaps where I've always worked in product within the startup space, but I've never been at an enterprise quick scale level. So I ended up joining a consulting or like a digital agency as a director of product. And then to Rich's point, it is a bit different, right? It's like you're pretty much focused on the client side, what they do. You're not challenging the roadmaps. Like you're just doing what they're asking you. Your job is to deliver the request. Sure, you can challenge some of that, but like you can't tell the clients like your roadmap's stupid. That does not make sense. They just have to assume it as is. so I think like that was like, for me, I learned a lot about process and how to optimize, like really learn how to deliver a product in a very good way, trim some of the deficiencies in your product process and gonna get better at it. And I think that's going to maybe be a better leader as well, just being there at Intersect, where I got to see other good leaders, how they grew their teams, how they mentored their teams, which was a big for me, like, oh, this is the path I want to go forward in. And then when the Rails opportunity came back again, I was like, what, I think this is a right fit. Joining early stage, I get to build my own team. I get to shape the roadmap. And now there's new learnings every day, just for the part of managing it.
Yeah. Sam.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what Rachel was saying, it's really out of necessity, right? So as the company grows, if you have an opportunity to get in at a smaller company, like, you are going to ride that elevator up if you are, present and committed and, doing great work. So that's definitely been a huge catalyst for me. But also, yeah, just that personal desire to make a larger impact at the company. Partly the product, just wanting to, go from helping one customer at a time solve their problem with a workaround to, I'm going to redesign how this works so you don't need that workaround in our software anymore. So that's been a really exciting piece, in the early phases of just becoming a PM. But then as the role has changed and grown, really, yeah, every 3 months, that's a good estimate of time there. It becomes making a bigger impact at the company and the culture. I'm now working on things, our processes, how we, communicate with our developers, growing a better, and more efficient relationship there. So you just get more and more interested in, kind of having that impact, not only in the product, but also in the company.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's curious, I guess, for all of you. I didn't hear anybody say I've been fired as a reason why you've made a career change in your product career, or that I've been demoted or anything like that. But it's good to see you've all had really good, successful paths through your product careers, and a nice positive, I guess, element to kind of pay attention to there on that side. I want to be mindful again here of time, so I'm probably look to kind of jump through some of our questions that we had kind of planned. But in particular, I guess maybe a lot of people here are probably interested from a navigating career perspective on just like, how do you get started? How do you find this important experience that you need to kind of, set the stage for a career in product? And also, like, if, how do you get that break? How do you get that moment? And Sam, I'm going to start with you first on this one, and then we'll go to Rachel and then Sam K. But curious on your thoughts here. Just how do you get that moment?
Yeah, again, the opportunities are going to be a lot more bountiful for you at a smaller company. I'm going to be a big proponent of working with customers first and knowing the product as a user first. I think that it gives you such valuable perspective, and it gives you something to bring to the table right out the gate, even if you don't understand what Scrum is or what Agile is or any of that. Like, if you're bringing that perspective, you can learn the rest of it. I think also just you have to have really good listening and decision-making skills. That sounds, very kind of trite, but the ability to listen to others on your team and not just come in guns blazing with like, this is how we're going to do it. You have to be open to other perspectives. You have to listen to what your designers are saying. You have to listen to your customer success team. You have to listen to your devs and what is going to work for them. And then be that person who is able to bring those perspectives together and make a decision. And you're not going to make everyone happy with it, but you have to, be at peace with yourself and that you did, the best you could with the information you had. One challenge I've seen, going from that customer success mindset into product is you have to learn to serve the 80%. So when you are, working in customer service, if that is the path that you take to get started, something you have to start, working through in your mind is, yes, I have to help this one person right now, but in the future, you cannot just kind of bend to the concerns and the needs of one user, which can be really tough. It can sound callous sometimes or uncaring, but really the best thing is you have to help that broader audience, and you have to learn to weed through, what is important to help the broader base, because that's what you need using your product.
Yeah, that's a great lens.
I would say my biggest piece of advice, and I talk with a lot of folks who, are in non-product roles, but want to break into it and say, how can I become a product manager? And I'll share pretty transparently, as a hiring manager, it's really tough to get a product manager role if you don't have that title and experience already, especially at a startup where candidly, there's not really much of a luxury to like incubate and coach and learn. Like a lot of the emphasis bringing people on who've been there, done that, can step in and start making a difference right away, because, your runway might run out, you're self-funded, you're scrappy, you're trying to do a lot. So my biggest piece of advice is to find opportunities within where you're at now to work with the product team, whether that's offering to take notes during a user interview and then debrief with the team after to discuss insights, or helping analyze results from an experiment that was run, or training other departments on upcoming features. So that's the best way I've found, is to try and get some experience working with the product team in your current role, and then communicate that interest to the product leaders. I pretty early on joining Tala, even though I was in the program manager role, expressed interest in becoming a product manager, and it was a lot of nights and weekends and side projects, kind of building those reps and that knowledge. And then when our most senior PM actually went out on parental leave, there's an opportunity to step in there. So a lot of it is luck, but also preparation and being ready to take that step. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice.
That's a great lens. Thank you. Sam.
Yeah, I agree with Rachel. Like in the startup space, there is like, you want someone kind of ready to roll their sleeve, and there's probably, depending on what stage the company is. In the early stages might be a bit difficult. Like, let me get in and figure this out. You want someone who've done this at least at some basic level, but that doesn't mean there's no opportunity at least to evolve into that. I think what people sometimes forget when they're applying or trying to get into product is, I think Rachel and Sam, you both brought up, like, you can always teach someone how to write user stories. You can always teach someone how to create a roadmap. It's the hard skills are kind of coachable, right? It's the soft skills that are not. Do you have a good EQ? Can you really be an active listener? Do you don't have ego? You need, every opinion matters. Every opinion can shape a product. Don't get distracted by shiny objects. As you get into a product, there's going to be a lot of noises, right? Your CEO wants to do this. Your customer success wants to do that. At one point, you have to know what is your ethos as a company, as a product, and really follow that. At one point, like, there's a data-driven mixed with your gut feelings sometimes is the path kind of to go forward. And at the same time, like tailoring to that 80%. If you have that 20% that is just like one customer, and it's happened to 80% can scale more, you probably want to start there. What I've seen as well, and I help folks get into product. So I've helped from two roles. I've had someone on my team right now in a previous career together. She started in operations, and she used to be close to the product team. And from a digital agency space, ops work closely with the product, keeping track of their hours, et cetera, are the projects on track. But she expressed interest in that. And if you're able to find someone in the product leadership team or your product team that's willing to put the time, is like, what, let me do some sessions here and there. Let me sit in on some of your calls, like Rachel said and Sam said. I decided, like, let's just kind of cover some basics. I'm going to add you to some of my calls, take notes, going to come up with suggestions. I'm going to help you do some of the admin work or the APM work, if you want to call it. These are going to be good ways to get into that. Coming from product support or customer success is also a good area, because you know the customer, you know your product. So you already got the soft skills, you understand what's in the market. Now you just have to kind of add those hard skills on top of it and how to kind of package it up and know what to build. It's just a matter of finding that kind of, if you want your champion in an org that's willing to put in the time and code. Now you might get lucky and find a startup that's like, we need all hands on deck, just figure out along the way. That is also a good opportunity, but you're definitely going to be burning the midnight oil on that one.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, like one of the things I always try to give advice to people on this too is like, and I think Rachel, you touched on this a little bit in your answers, like it's tough to get a product role. And part of that is there's not a lot of product roles. I think there's a lot of hype about product today, a lot of excitement about the function, but actually if you look at a total headcount of product managers in a product org, never mind even a larger company, probably like a 100-person company might have one, maybe 3 product managers high end. And so that's not a lot of percentage of roles. You know, roles like customer success, support, marketing, all these other functions have far more headcount, typically in a lot of cases, because they're supporting the customer. And so it's a great way to get close to the product, get the domain knowledge, you know, gain empathy for the customer, get the expertise and get close to the product team. And that could be a really effective way to get into some organizations and find that first job and role. I'm going to jump in with one last question, and you're going to have like one answer really quickly to give on this side. And that's one key takeaway or insight that you want to share with anybody who's kind of navigating their career and product. And I'm going to start with Sam first, and we'll go to Sam, and then we'll go to Rachel to wrap this one up.
Yeah, I would say that you don't need to have all of the answers within yourself. You need to have a good team around you. You need to facilitate good discussions and have the ability to make the decision. You're going to make a lot more friends with your coworkers that way, bringing their perspectives in than if you just put yours out.
Awesome. Sam K.
There's no stupid question. Always ask questions you have. Always ask why you're doing something or why you're being asked to do something. And then, yes, build relationships with your team, with your customer, with your community.
Wow, that's awesome. I think that's more than one, but that's good. Rachel, last over to you.
Yeah, mine would be being really mindful of the company stage that you're joining. The product role in your day-to-day will look really different, as well as your opportunity to grow, particularly vertically based off of the stage of the company and the culture and leadership team. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. Stage of a company over name of a company.
Excellent. That's great. Well, thanks everybody for the time today. I want to jump into some of the Q&A that we've got. We've got a few people with questions here on that side, and feel free to jump in with answers as we go along here on that side. First one's from Seth here. Any advice on making the move from a senior PM to a group PM or director PM without having people management experience? How do you get yourself considered for that particular role? I don't know who wants to chime in on this one. Could be Rachel or Sam.
I can try to take that maybe, since I recently made that transition. Part of it was just the pace at which we were growing. You know, we went from having 2 PMs in 2 teams to you know, over 15 PMs in teams. And so we moved to an organizational model that I saw work really well at my last startup, which is that group model of, you know, 4 product groups with 3 to 5 teams rolling up under each one. So part of making that transition was actually advocating for an org design that really carved out that role of you're still a bit of player coach, working on incubating product work and maybe doing some more strategic product bets, but there really was kind of a driving need for more of that connective tissue, if you will, between the product teams as well as between the product team and the rest of the org. So to the extent that you're able to kind of play that role maybe before you have it, showing that you can be a really great, you know, cross-functional partner and communication facilitator, if you will, of making sure information is flowing in all directions. That is really kind of helped prove out the need or the desire for a group PM role.
Anybody else with any thoughts there quickly on that one? No? Okay, we'll jump into the next question on that side. One other maybe tip I'd kind of give on this end too is lean into your organization in some ways. I think not having people management experience is not the end of the world. You can learn to become a people manager. So seek out like context of what your organization can provide you on that side in terms of support. Often there might be training you can take or programs you can enroll in. There might be other like books and resources the team's found success with. And certainly look for some of that kind of stuff as well to find that additional support that you need on that side. And it's also nothing wrong with finding another coach to give you that people management experience and support that you need along the way on that end as well. Next question here is, thanks for the amazing session. I've worked as a business consultant at EY for years and wishing to move into PM space. So I've got a couple here that might be consulting oriented. However, not a lot of companies consider you when you have no prior experience. So how do you go about that? I guess that chicken egg problem of no prior experience to get in, but want to get in, but no prior experience. Anybody want to chime in on that one?
I would say, because this is a strategy we kind of take in our hiring, which some might say is good, some might say is bad, but I would actually prefer to hire someone with no prior experience in the role, because I know they're not going to bring an ego. They're going to be bringing a learning mindset. And yes, you do have to as a hiring manager of that team, you do have to put in the time to coach them and bring them along, teach them the hard skills. But that's something that I prefer. So, coming into, again, another role in the company where they might not be looking for prior experience, but you have the ability to gain that and expressing an interest in moving on. I think it depends on the company, but it can work if you find a side door in.
Yeah, I would add to that, like if you are coming from management consulting, you're already been exposed to some of the pains of being in product, talking to customers that sometimes haven't figured out what they want to do yet, or you have the project management or the product delivery side, working with the teams that you're not directly managing per se. So you already have some of those skills, and you already got the soft skills where you're talking to customers, you're engaged, you're getting that kind of requirements and active listening. So you already have some of the basic skills. And he's like, yeah, I think as a manager, I prefer to, same thing. I would rather get someone where I can teach them that when they have no ego and like, I've done this before. If you're in consulting and you're looking into product, also please reach out.
My take might be a little bit different. And as well, coming from management consulting at EY, I would say my biggest pathway in was leveraging that PMO skill set and leveraging the industry knowledge too. So staying within financial services, staying within kind of some of the core competencies that I knew I had, and then leveraging that to get in to a different, stage of a company, a startup, was my big kind of transition. And then once you're there, it's much easier to kind of break into product. But I think this is one of the biggest challenges for those coming from MBA programs or consulting firms who want to become product managers. Is it's really hard to get in at a smaller stage tech company. Larger stage tech companies will typically have more strategy roles open, and that can be a really great transition, as well as going to like a strategy role at Google per se, and then getting into product that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the other things too I found really helpful, we had a session earlier, I believe it was earlier this year or late last year, I can't quite recall, with Petra Ville, who wrote the book Strong Product People. One of the things she has is what she calls the PM wheel. And it's basically a method to evaluate where your skill sets currently lie. I think just doing some self-evaluation on like, where are you strong? Where are you weak? What are the places maybe in your skill set that you need to develop to become more applicable to the roles that you're trying to apply for and the companies you want to work with? And so really just understanding that a little bit, like there are always going to be gaps in our careers in terms of our capabilities and where we're best or where we're strong or weak at. But sometimes just having the vocabulary around this can really help immensely with that transition, and also ensuring that you have the knowledge that you need to be successful in the roles that you're applying for on that side. Next one here, any advice or tips on how to make the move from product support to a PM role, and how to make your profile stand out coming from a support role? Sam, I'm going to put this one in your court because I know you love this stuff with the customer side of it. So
I do. I think the biggest thing I would say is to make sure that any contributions you're making are very solution oriented. I think sometimes when you're kind of in the mire of customer success and kind of dealing with those customers day to day, we can get trapped in the like, this needs to be fixed now, this needs to just change. But if you can make your contributions with, again, find someone in the company that can mentor you and advocate for you to make that jump over to product. For me, it was literally our CEO at different companies. That might be someone on the product team if it already exists, and have them to help you along. But make sure that you are demonstrating an ability to see beyond individual customer frustrations, and that you have an interest in making a larger impact, essentially, because you'll hopefully learn the hard skills, but just standing out as someone from customer success, I would say you have to demonstrate some level of vision that you're able to contribute on that higher level.
That's great. One of my favorite things, I guess, with customer support people is two things. You've got a huge leg up in terms of domain knowledge. You often know the product better than almost anybody else in the organization and company, because you have to deal with all these diversity of problems and stuff like that. So lean into your strengths too here as a support person in terms of that. And then, like, as I think Sam is trying to say, is like, find your advocate, find that person you can connect with and partner with, and they can kind of advocate for you and you can advocate for them, and you can work together and find your way in and your wiggle in, and just be patient. Like this part of it too is, again, there's not a lot of these roles. Like there's not 100 PM positions, so it may take a little longer for that opportunity to open the door, and so you just got to keep at it and be patient on that end. We've got a couple more minutes left here, I guess, to wrap things up. I'm maybe we'll take one more question on this side. Do you have any advice on working with founders and CEOs who have trouble giving up product ownership?
I can chime in on that one. I feel like if you're in a startup, you pretty much have that problem every day. It's like, it goes back to trust, really, and a bit of empathy, kind of a mix of both, right? I try to put myself in their shoes. I have difficulty just not being a founder or CEO right now, handing off the baton to some of my product managers. So it's always going to be a thing. So it goes back, like, really empathize and understand what the vision and strategy of the company, really, because you cannot going to get their trust if you haven't understood really the industry really well, understood what their vision, where they want to take the company, and have alignment with them on that. And having that kind of recurring touch points, like, show them a few months, quarters that you got this and you're aligned and you're making progress on that roadmap. I think you need to be close with the founders when you're taking over the product, especially if your founder is also a technical person who really can solution for you on what he's describing the problem. So I think you just want controlling the communication flow between you and those founders to make sure that it's really focused high level where you're heading, and to kind of let them go off tangents and get into the weeds of things. So I think that if you summarize it, trust, empathy, and kind of stay aligned on the vision and strategy.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. This was super interesting, really fantastic to hear your journeys, your individual stories. I appreciate you sharing all your advice. I think we could probably talk for like 2 hours here today on this topic. So I want to be mindful of your time and of course, everybody else's time on this end. So again, thank you. It's been super fantastic having you. And I'm really glad we could make this time. I'm going to kick over and just kind of wrap up a couple quick things here on this side. Post event, we do have a survey. I put that in the chat for anybody that's joining us. If you do want to share, please fill out the survey. We'd love to hear your feedback, how to make these events better, more valuable for you as attendees overall on that side. We've also got, the community that we run here at Product Makers that can act as a great place to continue the conversation or discussion. So if you have questions maybe that come up that you'd like this group to answer, feel free to mention them in the channel, and we are in the sort of community, and we'd be happy to get them to answer them or chime in post event on this side. We've got a lot of great events coming up as well. We're talking on the 24th with 2 PMs from Amplitude and Productboard about how they actually went through the task of building a recent integration that we did. We're going to pull back the curtains a little bit and talk about the messy middle, which will be kind of fun on that side. We've got Ian Ames coming up in April talking about product prioritization as a triage. He's going to bring in his experience working in mountain rescue teams, which will be kind of interesting to see how that applies to the product management process, the triage process. We've got Matt Atkins, who's another member of our community, talking about building hardware in a software space. And then we also have Michelle Hansen coming in, who's the author of Deploy Empathy, helping us talk about user interviews and how to deal with all those kind of awkward moments that are kind of part of that. This will be a really fun interactive session on that end. Lots of other ways too to get involved. We run regular monthly roundtables. We also have our Meet a Maker program, which is a great way to meet other product managers like the people we've got here. And you can also get involved as a speaker. We'd love to have you here, joining, sharing your knowledge, your experiences. There's no rights or wrongs. We're all learning together, and we'd love to have you participating and helping out. So thanks everybody again for joining us, and thanks to all the panelists as well for everything you did today. We look forward to sharing the recording afterwards. And thanks again for helping out, participating.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, have a fantastic day.